All right. I want to say welcome to all the book lovers. This is Sarah Richmond, the Director of Communication and Education here at Edelweiss by Above the Tree Line. And I am in Michigan right now, which we had snow yesterday, but it is starting to feel like spring. It's a great day to celebrate Earth Day. We are, just so you know, we're recording today. We're going to share the recording afterwards. If you have questions for our panelists anytime, we've got Allison who's monitoring the chat and she'll try to keep an eye on those. If we don't get to questions today, we will reach out to you directly afterwards. So definitely feel free if you have questions, throw them out there. I want to take just a quick second and mention that all of the publisher proceeds from this session go to support the work of Treeline 2020, which is our initiative to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and sustainability in our publishing industry. So this is really a driving mission for us that underlines all the work that we do as a company, but Treeline 2020 in particular accomplishes this goal through investing in organizations doing great work, and providing access to internships and scholarships, and amplifying marginalized voices. So thank you for participating and making all of that possible. I was mentioning to the panelists before we started that today's session is really near and dear to me personally. I feel very passionate about today's topic, and I feel the looming climate crisis like many of you, I'm sure, and I wonder this Earth Day kind of what the path forward should be. But whenever I'm feeling confused or perhaps even a bit hopeless at times, I know we can turn to books to inspire us, energize us, motivate us, teach us, and just help us ask the right questions. So that's what we're here today to do. This is a special edition of our editor's picks, which is always fun, but the special Earth Day edition, we're going to hear from some amazing collection of books, and we're going to hear directly from the publishers and authors about why they're so excited about these books. So whether you're a bookseller or a buyer or a librarian or a reviewer or just someone who loves books and loves reading, you're definitely going to leave with some more books on your to be read list. That's my warning to you, but it's a good problem to have. And don't worry, we're going to send out links to all of these books so you can learn more about them after this session. And many of them also have review copies available in Edelweiss that you can check out as well. So here's what we did. We asked all of our publishers and their editors to suggest their favorite picks for books that inspire us to respect and restore our Earth, which is today's International Earth Day theme. And of those submissions, our sustainability committee tried to put together a really good collection, a mix of things, those that were most interesting, most unique, most kind of powerful or impactful titles for today. And so we have representatives from 14 publishers, some of them the authors themselves, and they're each just going to take a few minutes, which is hard. It's hard when you are passionate about a book to just take a few minutes, but they're going to share why they're so excited about their book. And we're going to start with some children's, youth, and young adult titles, and then we're going to end with an awesome collection of nonfiction books you don't want to miss. So let's get started with some children's and young adult books. I am the mother of two boys, ages 7 and 11, and I'm always looking for books that are going to inspire them to care about their planet, the environment, and accountability for their actions in the world. So get ready because these are some pretty amazing books. We're going to start with Sky Pony Press, which is part of Skyhorse Publishing, and Rebecca Warfield's going to talk to us about a few books by Julian Lennon.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. And of course, happy Earth Day. Thank you, Sarah and Edelweiss. My name is Rebecca Warfield, and I'm here representing Skyhorse Publishing and Julian Lennon's New York Times bestselling children's books with Bart Davis. A book, a hug, and a smile are the greatest bedtime gifts of all, and Julian treasures his own memories, curling up with his mother and reading, and being read to as a child. For all of us parents, educators, and caregivers, we can truly appreciate that Julian wants books that celebrate the power of joy and love in the world, books that teach children to believe anything is possible and empower them from an early age, that they too can make a difference. Overall, he and Bart believe that if you teach children to love the earth, they will naturally want to take care of it. So in all three books in this beautiful box set, Touch the Earth, Heal the Earth, and Love the Earth, Children aged 3 to 6 can jump aboard the White Feather Flyer, a magical plane that can go anywhere. The Flyer's mission is to transport young readers to help save the environment in different places around the world and to teach one and all to love our planet. Just press a button, you can kind of see it here, print it on the page, and use your imagination power to make the Flyer glide through the air or transform into vehicles that help those in need. Over the years, a lot of people have asked about the significance of the white feather in Julian's books. What does it mean? Julian's personal message in the book describes this real life story. He explains that his dad once said to him that if he should pass away, if there was a way of letting him know he was okay, that we were all going to be okay, the message would come in the form of a white feather. Then, while on a wildly successful sold-out tour in Australia one year, he was unexpectedly presented with a giant white feather by all of the Aboriginal tribal elders of the Mirning tribe, asking for his help. Julian gasped. It truly took his breath away. It led him to create the White Feather Foundation for the purpose of giving a voice and support to those who are not heard. The books each include a unique and special poem written by Julian to fit each story. And they're actually all unique in kind of the back of the books here. A portion of the proceeds from book sales goes to support the environmental and humanitarian efforts of the White Feather Foundation that Julian founded in 2007 to promote education, health, conservation, and the preservation of Indigenous cultures. The success of the picture book series led Julian and Bart to create a new story based on one of the White Feather Foundation's central goals: support for Indigenous people around the world. So the next book is The Morning Tribe, and it's an action-adventure graphic novel geared toward ages 8 to 12 that showcases young people protecting our critical environment. It teaches that we are all part of the struggle to save the Earth's future and sustain the human race. When twins Dawn and Dusk, young members of the Amazon rainforest Morning Tribe, discover that their homeland is being threatened by global AgriCorps mercenaries, they gather their friends and rise to the challenge of protecting it. Though they're naturally smart, strong, and quick, the twins each have special abilities. Dusk is stronger, faster, and more powerful as the sun sets. Dawn is farther sighted, a better swimmer, and a gifted acrobat as the sun rises. They are at the height of their power together at midnight. But young Tom Toll, estranged son of AgriCorps' boss, ventures alone into the forest to destroy the people of the Morning Tribe and soon finds himself in danger. He's actually saved by Dusk and Dawn, and they develop a deep bond between them. Tom then gains an understanding not only of the forest, but of shared values and a greater global mission. When the trio of youngsters saves Tom's father and the AgriCorps crew who are attempting to burn the rainforest, it changes the relationship between father and son into a positive one forever. The Morning Tribe's theme and content again derive from the global work of the White Feather Foundation, created by Julian, and of course the connection with the Mirning Tribe, who presented to him that first white feather that started it all. Julian was recently the recipient of the UNESCO 2020 Cross-Cultural and Peacecrafter Award. He and the foundation have been active in the rainforest for more than a decade. And a portion of the proceeds from book sales will continue to support the White Feather Foundation's environmental and humanitarian efforts to conserve life. Thank you all for being here today and for your attention. We celebrate all of us and Earth Day with open hearts and hope for all the people of the earth. Most of all, we celebrate the central message of our books, that in the fight to protect our planet, we are all in it together. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. I love how that book demonstrates that young people can really make a difference and have an impact themselves. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have two titles from Free Spirit Publishing, and Meg Brach, an editor there, is going to share them with us.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Meg Bratch, and I represent Free Spirit Publishing up here in chilly Minneapolis today. Happy Earth Day, everyone. At least the sun's out. Free Spirit is a leading publisher of books that support young people's social and emotional growth. And we publish both fiction and nonfiction on topics like bullying and empathy and special needs, character, and community. And we're very passionate about today's key issues like equity and inclusion and the environment. And for Earth Day, I've chosen two books. The first one is called Jaden's Impossible Garden, and it's written by Melina Mangal and illustrated by Ken Daly. And this book was special because it was the winner of our first annual African American Voices in Children's Literature contest that we started with a local publisher, another one that we started a couple years ago, and we're just about to launch the third installment of the contest next month. And this was the winner of the first one. And I love this book. First of all, the illustrations are just beautiful and illuminating. They have this kind of ethereal quality to them. And it tells the story of a young boy, Jaden, who lives in the middle of the city in a high rise with his mother. And Jaden loves nature. And but his mother has the refrain throughout the book when Jaden talks about it that there's no nature in the middle of the city, Jaden. Well, Jaden doesn't accept that answer. And he soon befriends a gentleman in his building, Mr. Curtis, who's in a wheelchair and who also loves nature. And it's just this really special, unusual cross-age relationship that they form, a friendship. And they decide they're going to bring nature to their small little plot outside the apartment building where they live. And they devise this beautiful, what Jaden calls a secret garden tree fort, or magical secret garden fort rather, and with cardboard boxes, and they plant seeds in old recycled containers, and they hang up little like bird nests and vines. And it's just a beautiful project. And at the end of the book, they succeed in tempting out all of the residents of the building into outside to admire this beautiful creation that they've made. If you can see, they've attracted birds and butterflies and animals, and everything is blooming. And they even win over Jaden's mother, the skeptic. And it's just this, it's a beautiful story of how nature can be healing and can bring a community together no matter where you live. And I think that's a really timely story to be telling right now, especially for kids who live in maybe poor urban environments who we don't necessarily see as environmentalists and nature lovers in the same way as kids who might live in the middle of the country, but they are, and they need to be encouraged to be part of this movement, and encouraged young, which is why I love this book. Jaden's Impossible Garden. It also has some little craft activities in the back that are really simple gardening projects using recycled items. And so that's our fiction book. And the next book I want to talk about is an example of our nonfiction. And this one is called Protecting the Planet. And it's part of a series that we have called Together in Our World, which focuses on really tough, kind of difficult issues globally, and puts them in a kid-friendly language and engaging format. And this one focuses, of course, on environmentalism. And what I love about this book is just how simple yet not watered down the content is. I read it to my daughter who's in first grade, and then she read it herself, and she really liked it for that reason. She said, "Mommy, this stuff makes sense." Like it's tough for kids to wrap their head around emissions and global warming and pollution and mass consumption. And the way that this book is written, you'll see just simple text and art really engages kids and helps empower them that they can do things just in their own bedrooms, like, make repairing things when they break versus buying something new. Reinventing something, making it into something new, using old boxes and containers for crafts, which my daughter does all the time. And then also just changing your lifestyle, just simple things like biking and walking somewhere, which kids can do. They can make that choice. They don't have to be an adult to make choices like simplifying your life and choosing to not be, a polluter. And that, so that's what I like about this book. It's just accessible, easy to imagine for kids, ways that they can help protect the earth. And that's about it for me. We have a lot of other books that also support Earth Day if you want to check out our website. And thank you so much for giving me the time today to speak to you.
Thanks, Meg. I love how even that second book has the glossary and resources in the back. It's so helpful for teachers and parents who have curious kiddos and you want to encourage their interests.
Yeah, fun. I do too. It's a good back matter.
Yeah, I have a first grader too. They've got lots of questions. All right, next up, we've got 2 titles from Chronicle Books, and Victoria Rock is going to talk to us about them. Maybe. Do we have?
Sorry about that. That was muted. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. I'm happy to be here today. And I'm super excited to be presenting both of these titles. This first title is by the immensely talented Sophie Blackall, and I've been an editor for almost 40 years, and this is probably one of my top 10 titles that I've ever worked on. I'm sure most of you are familiar with all of Sophie's amazing books, and what you might not know is that she's also a book ambassador of sorts for both UNICEF and Save the Children. And this book was inspired by a moment when she found herself high atop the Himalayan mountains in a classroom of 10 children in Bhutan. And they had no shared language, but they did have shared art. But in that moment, she really wished that she had a book that could showcase for children how we are more alike than we are different. And so really, this book shows how linked the ideas of caring for the earth and caring for each other are. This book was 6 years in the making. Not so much hands-on making, but the bits and pieces of it percolating in Sophie's brain as she worked on all kinds of other things and as she traveled around the world. When we first acquired it, the title was The Book of Everything. And it starts by showing readers where Earth is in the solar system, the different kinds of transportation that you might experience around the world, different weather, different clothing. But that sounds very encyclopedic. And while the book covers literally an enormous amount of ground, it is much more than an encyclopedia of things. It's a letter from one little boy to what he imagines might be out in the universe, and inviting whatever might be out there to come to Earth and learn all about us. He'd like whatever's out there to come and stay in his room, offering up lodging. And so it's kind of a travel guide for people who are not familiar with Earth. And it's really funny and touching and philosophical and thought-provoking. Sophie worked with a classroom as she developed this book, and there are questions at the end that were questions posed by those kids. And I bet if you share those questions with other children, they will have lots of questions of their own as well, and might provoke some questions even in us adults. The first time I presented this book to our sales team, our sales director gave me a little heart across the room, and our salespeople love books, but they see a lot of books. So it's a high bar to get the heart symbol across the room. And this book did that. I could talk about this book for hours. We don't have that. It is a book that literally you can go into over and over again and find new things. Sophie has done an enormous amount of online presentations as we've been stuck in the pandemic. And so if you want to search for those, she is one of the most amazing speakers that you'll ever encounter and can tell you in great detail about everything that went into creating this book. This book has received 4-star reviews. It was featured in the New York Times, but more than that, Sophie has received such amazing letters from people who say they needed this book in this particular moment. And as I tell her, she was always so apologetic for taking a long time to create the book, but I think this book landed exactly when we needed it. The next book is My Friend Earth. This book is written by one of the grand dames of children's book writing, Patricia McLaughlin. She has far too many books for me to be able to even list them on a single page. I'm sure most of you know that she is the author of the Newbery winner, Sarah Plain and Tall, but she writes chapter books, she writes novels, she writes picture books. This book actually took even longer than Sophie's book to create. The text came in and it was perfect, as so many of Patty's texts are, but it took us a long time to find the right artist and to really figure out how to create the book that we wanted to create. What we really wanted to do with this book was to be able to create a book that in its actual tangible form had the dynamic quality of nature itself. And it's a perfect example of an author, an artist, and a design and production team all finding each other exactly when they needed to, and creating a really exemplary piece of bookmaking. There are lots of die cut pages in this book so that you really sort of can feel the undulating motion, mountains and oceans. You can peek below the icy ocean surface and find all the living nature below it. And what we really wanted to do with this book was to take the idea of Mother Earth and turn it into a child character that children could really relate to, and to convey the sense that Earth is a friend and Earth cares for you, but like a friend, you need to care for the Earth in return. It's a really special book. If you haven't seen it, I hope that you will take some time and search it out. Thank you very much.
They're both such beautiful books. And I love just how they take a potentially complex topic, like you mentioned, and make it approachable and welcoming to small children. So thanks for sharing those two. Next up, we've got two titles from Tiger Tales, and we've got Tammy Salzano is going to talk to us about them.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Hi, I'm Tammy Salzano, and I am super excited about these two books on our list. These are two of my favorites. The first one is called It's Only One by Tracy Corderoy, and this book it's all about it's very engaging, accessible text. Basically, the story is that all these characters in the book live in Sunnyvale, which is the absolute perfect place to live. Everybody's friendly, it's nice and clean, until one day Rhino decides to throw his garbage on the ground. And the little mouse is kind of, well, hey, what are you doing? He said, well, it's only one. But the problem with that is it doesn't stay only one. Rhino throws his garbage on the ground, so then everyone else starts throwing their garbage on the ground instead of in the garbage can. And soon the town is a complete mess. And Giraffe decides that he doesn't want to look at all this mess, so he goes to the park to pick a flower. Well, he picks a flower and then everyone else starts picking flowers, so suddenly there are no flowers in the park for people to enjoy when they go out to the park. So it kind of just builds on each other, you know, the events build like that. Finally, this peaceful, sweet, friendly town of Sunnyvale is now this grumpy, noisy, messy place. And everyone does not know what to do until Little Mouse seems to think that she has an idea, but it's going to require everybody's help to do it. One of the things that I love about this book, I mean, I'm a big fan of Tracy Corderoy's books, just in general. But one thing I love about this book is the text is so accessible. The illustrations, there's a lot of visual humor. It's kind of like every time you read it, you pick up on something a little bit different. That adds to the story, which is really great. The subjects of good citizenship and taking care of the planet, which are very timely, are presented in this book in a very accessible way for children. In the back matter, there are notes from the author and illustrator on tips to encourage readers to be considerate of others, ways that they can be a good neighbor, reminders to always pick up your trash. If there's no garbage can, bring it home with you and throw it away when you get home. Other ways to take care of parks, not touching the animals, not feeding the animals if there are signs saying not to do so, and keeping noise levels down. Kids are wonderfully loud, rambunctious individuals, but one of the things is reminding them that not everybody likes noise. So just to be mindful of when it's appropriate to be loud and having fun. So this one is definitely a very fun book. So that's our first one. Our second book is called Little Turtle in the Changing Sea. This one I am particularly fond of because turtles are one of my absolute favorite animals. This is the story of Little Turtle, who every year returns to the beach where she was born to lay her eggs, as sea turtles do. And every year she goes through and she just marvels at the wonders of everything around her. But then during one journey, she notices that her ocean home is looking a little bit different. All of a sudden, there are strange things in the water that she doesn't recognize, and she feels afraid because she doesn't recognize her home anymore. And in fact, she even gets tangled up in some garbage at one point. But thankfully, there are good people out there who come and help rescue her and help to clean up her home. So it does start looking more like her home, and they've returned the home to her. And so she can, now feel comfortable in her own home. There is extensive back matter in this book, which I think is fantastic. I think it's one of the most wonderful things about this book. There's a note from the author about what this book means to her and why she wrote it. A brief explanation of how plastics and other garbage end up in the ocean to begin with, and how they can hurt marine life. Because children may not be aware of how it could be dangerous. It talks about the Great Garbage Patch in the Pacific Ocean and the efforts that are being done to help clean that up. What readers can do to help reduce the amount of garbage that ends up in the ocean, and a great list of suggestions for further reading and some websites and actually there's a link for a website to the Great Garbage Patch if kids are more interested in learning a little bit more about that. So those are our two books from Tiger Tales.
It's such a beautiful story. It's kind of heartbreaking, but also really important message. And I love that it has all that material at the end. Thanks for sharing with us. Okay, next up, we have a couple titles from Welbeck Publishing, which is, if you're looking for them, distributed by Ingram Publishing Services and Edelweiss. And Michelle is here to share with us.
Hi, my name is Michelle Bayuk, and I'm really excited to be representing, doing the marketing for Welbeck Children's here in the US. And for a lot of reasons, talking to people about books is one of my favorite things to do. And I'm very excited in this pandemic world the rare opportunities to talk to children's book people about children's books. So first up is a new series for us entitled Earth Action. There's drastic plastic and troublesome trash and weird weather and changing climate. I think the titles are fairly straightforward as to what they're about. But what makes the series different and interesting to me is that it does what great nonfiction does, which is go into the details of the science, but also talks about things they can do and provides activities and even some crafts. In the case of the Jurassic Plastic, it's also unique is that it talks about how these materials, plastic, glass, paper, and such, are made in the first place, and then the science behind how they are recycled. And in weird weather, it goes into all the various different types of extreme weather we've been experiencing. Like before this webinar, a lot of the panelists had a fun conversation about snow and tornadoes and all sorts of things that have just happened in the last few days around the country. And then I also learned a new fact. One of the things I love about working with children's books is I sometimes learn things. I often learn things. And in the deep freeze section, which is talking about the polar vortex, the quick fact I put in there is that as our weather gets weirder and weirder, hailstones are going to get bigger and bigger. So while we might talk about hailstones as big as golf balls, we should be expecting hailstones as big as oranges. And then our next book. Yes. I know. I don't want to. And my car is parked outside, so it's all here. No. So next one is a young adult book, although it goes down to about ages 11. I didn't say 11 plus, but I think an interested child could go even younger. Entitled "Be More Vegan." In the first sections, the author goes into all the really good reasons why she chooses to be vegan and why veganism helps not only our planet but our bodies, helps our animal welfare benefits. A unique thing to me, for me, when I was reading this is that she also goes into a lot of the ethical quandaries, because people who become vegan are often doing so for ethical reasons, and yet some of the things you do might have an opposite effect. And so it goes into sort of ways to be careful about things and to really be thoughtful about your choices. And then it goes into, there are 50 recipes that are teen friendly, although there are a couple of adventurous ones in there. I also think this would actually be useful for adults who are interested in being more vegan or being vegan, or conveniently vegan is the term I've heard out there. And she does, Nikki very much makes it clear that she believes that living a vegan lifestyle is what's best for the planet and our bodies. But she really does say, and it's a very important point I want to make, is that even just being a little more vegan, one meal a week, one day a week, paying attention to the clothes you buy or the household goods you buy, can make a difference. And so, as I say, is if you want to be a bit more vegan, this is a great book.
I love that. I love how approachable it is. For it's not all or nothing. There can be little ways to just make some small changes. It's cool. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so we're going to shift gears just a little bit and move on to some nonfiction titles. I know if you have young people in your life, you probably wrote down a lot of the ones we just covered. I know you're going to write down a lot of these too. And just like Michelle had a book that probably crossed audiences as well, if a lot of young people are hungry for this content and probably interested in some of these nonfiction titles as well. But we're going to start out with Rory Fanning from Haymarket is going to talk to us about one of their books.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Rory Fanning, and I am the bookstore and library outreach coordinator here at Haymarket Books. Our mission at Haymarket is to publish books that contribute to struggles for social and economic justice. Our authors include Noam Chomsky, Arundhati Roy, Rebecca Solnit, Angela Davis, Naomi Klein, and Miriam Kaba. Today, I'll be presenting No Planet B, a Teen Vogue Guide to the Climate Crisis, edited by Teen Vogue News and Politics editor Lucy Diavolo. The book is a collection of essays, original reporting, and analysis with a foreword by Lindsay Peoples-Wagner. And from the foreword, I just wanted to quote Peoples-Wagner here. To have an equal society and a livable planet for all people, we desperately need to understand how climate destruction impacts people from all walks of life. I hope that this book embodies Teen Vogue's motto of making young people feel seen and heard all over the world. I hope that it forces their parents, communities, loved ones, friends, and most importantly, those in power to see that the health of our planet depends on how quickly and drastically we change our behaviors. I hope it forces them to respond. No Planet B includes essays spanning topics from recycling isn't going to stop plastic from destroying the earth, to what you should know about environmental racism, to Greta Thunberg wants you, yes you, to join the climate strike. The Teen Vogue site averages about 1.5 million unique viewers a month, and their news and politics page run by Diavolo has become a place for topical, inspiring, and radical takes on current events and social movements, in particular the struggle for climate justice. Teen Vogue approaches its work with a distinctly anti-racist feminist lens. No Planet B is a collection of some of the most popular articles from Teen Vogue over the last couple of years on the climate justice coverage. Having these articles in an accessible, attractive print book will not only capitalize on the vast audience that Teen Vogue has already cultivated, but will also bring their work to a new audience of readers. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present this book today.
Yeah, it's a really cool one. I love how it's a collection of stories, kind of makes it bite-sized. I wrote this one down. One of my good friends is a high school English teacher, and I really feel like she needs this book in her library. So thanks for sharing that one, Rory. So next up, we've got a couple titles that are distributed on Edelweiss by Simon & Schuster and supported by Insight Editions. And James is going to talk to us about this. The first one is by Weldon Owen.
Yeah, hi there. I'm James Jacinto. I'm the senior publicist at Insight Editions. And today I am presenting one book from our Weldon Owen imprint and one from our Earthaware imprint. We're Northern California based, and we've published with a green conscience for over 20 years. We're currently, I just want to note, launching a completely plant-based imprint called New Seed Press, which I would love to speak to you about offline. But yeah, so our first book is #Eat Meat Less, Good for Animals, the Earth, and All by Dr. Jane Goodall and the Jane Goodall Institute. Certainly the first book I've ever worked on that has a hashtag for a name, but there's certainly a great reason for it. I love the book because I love Jane Goodall and her lifetime of work. It's been so gratifying to work with her and her team. The book has over 75 plant-based recipes that are expertly crafted, beautifully photographed, and overall amazing to eat. Underlying the whole book, the book is Jane's belief in the need for the global adoption of plant-based diets as the most accessible and important step we can take in fighting global climate change. Interspersed between the recipes are beautiful pieces of writing by Jane herself, detailing the immense impact of making the personal commitment to go plant-based in your consumption habits. Decrying industrialized agriculture's inhumanity and its devastating effect on the earth, Dr. Goodall never strays from her inspiring sense of hope in praising our capacity to take individual action that drives collective change. Among so much else, Jane is at her core an educator, and her beautifully written pieces gently illustrate how easy it is to make the switch to plant-based diets, while the recipes show that the change can not only be healthy, but delicious. Some of my favorite recipes include the tofu scramble wrap with spinach and spiced sunflower seeds, winter squash stuffed with apples and wild rice. It's truly, truly a culinary feast. And importantly, #Eat Meat Less is far more than just a cookbook. It's a full-fledged campaign that Jane and the Jane Goodall Institute view as a long-term activation involving events, her brand new and very popular podcast, and extensive social media. And so it's clear that this book is going to be present in the conversation for a long, long time to come. So we're very excited about it. Our next book is Hope in Hell, How We Can Confront the Climate Crisis and Save the Earth. This book is by prominent British environmentalist and writer Jonathan Porritt, CBE, who's known as the co-founder of Forum for the Future, as well as one of the early leaders of the British Green Party. I love this book particularly because it has this wry and stern, unflinching honesty that makes its ultimate sense of hope feel really earned and well-reasoned rather than obligatory or performative. If we are to confront the climate crisis, we must fully understand the climate crisis, and Porritt quickly proves himself a compelling and assured instructor, breaking down the actions we must take individually, collectively, and systemically to avoid irreversible climate change in the decade ahead. The book is ultimately optimistic despite the dire challenges we face. Porritt explores current science and new technologies, the mobilization of young people and their relationship to politics, and discusses intergenerational solidarity. We all need to learn our own responsibilities in creating a better world for our successors. The book is also the first major book to comment upon the Biden-Harris administration's climate plan, which to Jonathan Porritt reads, quote, like a clarion call to arms, an eloquent plea to mobilize the massive resources of the most powerful nation on earth to address the climate emergency, a mobilization that just might, over time, be seen as as important as the mobilization of America after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor during the Second World War, end quote. Later exploring the potential roadblocks and inhibitors that will need to be accounted for by governments and individuals alike, Porritt lays out a practical and direct survey of the tough but tenable road ahead. It's a stunning book that breaks the creeping climate crisis into its component parts, and with inspiring assurance and resolute hopefulness, shows us how we will fight our way out of it. Review copies are available for both, and I would love to talk to you about our titles offline. Feel free to get in touch. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jane. Those are both important books to add to your shelf for sure. So thanks for sharing those. Next up, we've got a title by Esri, which is distributed by Ingram Publishing Services on Edelweiss, and we've got Claudia here to share it with us.
Thank you. Hello, I'm an acquisitions editor at Esri Press. For 24 years, Esri Press has been publishing books about the science, application, and technology of location intelligence, more easily understood as digital mapping, and analysis. This technology, called GIS, is used widely in government, healthcare, public safety, utilities, resource management, and much more. In the last few years, Esri Press is publishing more books for the general public. We feel strongly that Protecting the Places We Love by Breece Robertson is a perfect book for Earth Day. It issues a call to action backed by strategies, methods, and resources to help expand the pace and scale of land protection. This is a key defense to save our planet from the devastating effects of climate change and biodiversity loss and improve environmental equity. I first met Breece Robertson several years ago when Esri Press wrote the first volume of Women in GIS, Mapping Their Stories. I was so impressed with her active commitment to the environment. Breece spent 17 years at Trust for Public Land, where she helped to develop and drive strategic park and conservation decisions in the US. Now she is doing that with a global reach at Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Protecting the Places We Love, Conservation Strategies for Entrusted Lands and Parks has been endorsed by 3 important conservation organizations: Nature Conservancy, the Trust for Public Land, and Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Esri Press is partnering with these organizations to promote the book. To quote Diane Regas, President and CEO of the Trust for Public Land, "Protecting the Places We Love provides a brilliant roadmap forward for anyone who is curious about a world where fresh air, majestic landscapes, and human connection can help solve our most intractable social challenges." Professionals at the 1,300 land trusts in the US and almost 90,000 local governments that manage parks will benefit from this book. Worldwide, there are over 30,000 environmental organizations who will also benefit. And some of these groups are just a few individuals who want to save a forest or a creek behind their houses from being paved over, or a community organization that wants an undeveloped tract as a park rather than have more houses built. These people are environmental advocates and neighborhood activists who start small local groups that end up working with the larger organizations, such as the Nature Conservancy. This book helps empower individuals, small groups, and larger groups, and takes their conservation efforts to the next level. This book is 300 pages with over 150 full-color photographs, maps, charts, and more. In a nutshell, Protecting the Places We Love provides a vision of bold conservation strategies to boost land protection around the world. It describes targeted action that is science-based and data-based, but it's not meant for experts. Breece wants to open the door of conservation to everyone, and GIS is a great way to do that. Because of climate change and human development pressures, we are at a turning point where protecting the places we love will help save us and the environment. The conservation strategies in this book will help organizations and individuals take direct action with GIS tools and data to make a collective impact to save the planet. It's time. Thank you.
That sounds like a guide for action right there for sure. So thanks for sharing with us, Claudia. Our next title is from Island Press, and we have Rachel Miller here to tell us all about it. Flip over.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. And I'm so excited about this event. My to-read list is growing a lot. I want to talk a little bit about Island Press first. We are a publisher of books that offer sustainable solutions to the most pressing environmental problems. So there's so much that we have for people who want to read more about environmental issues. And there's such a range. Just a little teaser of some things that we have coming up. We have a book about sustainable spirits and liquor. We have a book about debunking the myth of autonomous cars and the lofty promises they claim to hold. And we have a book about microplastic pollution in the oceans. So that's just a few things that we have coming up this year, and there's so much more. So please check us out. Today I'm talking about Building the Cycling City, which is written by a married couple, Melissa Bruntlett and Chris Bruntlett. They are such a dynamic duo, and their joy and love of biking really comes through in this book. I'm going to point to a few things that I have on the Edelweiss listing, and one of those is a photo of the two of them in Lego form on their bikes with their books. So you get a chance to check that out. This book documents their experience traveling to the Netherlands and learning about how the Netherlands has been able to become such a bike-friendly, safer biking country where cycling is celebrated. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges that North America faces that the Netherlands doesn't, and they look those clear in the eye and share inspiration and a workbook for committed citizens to bring to their social lives in their cities to increase biking and make it safer. One thing they talk about that I think is really important is sort of the cultural aspect. In the Netherlands, there are two different words for cyclist. One translates to wheel runner. That's kind of the type of person that gets all in latex and gets on their expensive road bike and goes as fast as possible. The other word translates just to cyclist. Another word used, I think it's walking with wheels is how it translates literally. And that's what they're talking about. They want bikes to be comfortable, safe. You should be able to get on your bike in your work clothes. Anyone of any age or ability should be able to do it safely and comfortably. It's really inspirational. They are social media mavens, and their joy and personality come through in the book. They take a narrative approach to sharing some of their experiences and write really conversationally and accessibly. So if you are a person who either wants to bike more in your city or you already do and you're wondering, how can my city be safer for cycling, this is a great book to pick up. Since publishing this book, the authors have actually moved to the Netherlands and work for the Dutch Cycling Embassy. And we have a new book coming from them in June, which is called Curbing Traffic. This book I would describe as sort of the next step after you're rebuilding the cycling city. So if you kind of dip your toes in the water and you really love what you've read and you want to learn more about making your city safer, Curbing Traffic makes a compelling argument for why having fewer cars in our cities makes them safer, healthier, and happier across the board. So I recommend reading that. Finally, Island Press does a giveaway every year for Bike Month. This was interrupted last year for obvious reasons, but I'm so excited that it is starting again this year. Bike Month is every May, where cities encourage their residents to ride bikes as a form of transportation that is sustainable, healthy, and of course, it's fun. So that is starting in about 3 weeks, and on the Edelweiss page for this book, there's a link to get an early sign up. The year that this book came out, the authors participated in Bike Month by joining us in DC on a 50-mile bike ride around the city. So they are very impassioned about this and great partners for us. So please check all of that out, and happy reading and happy biking.
That's awesome. It's great to learn how other countries have tackled problems with success. And that's a really long bike ride. Thanks, Rachel.
They were ambitious, and it was raining.
Yeah, wow. Our next two titles come from the New Press, which is distributed on Edelweiss by Ingram Publishing Services as well. And we have their executive editor, Mark Favreau, with us to talk about those.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm executive editor of the New Press. I'm very happy to be here with you today on Earth Day. The New Press is actually a not-for-profit publisher. We were founded in 1992. The categories in which we are best known are really progressive education, criminal justice, reform, labor history, economic, racial, and environmental justice, as well as more recently immigration. Major New Press authors you might know include Michelle Alexander, the author of The New Jim Crow, and James Loewen, author of Lies My Teacher Told Me, to name just a few. So today I'm going to tell you about just two and environmental justice books coming up for us this spring. It's a real growth area for the New Press and one that we're investing a lot of resources in now. In May, we are thrilled to be publishing The World We Need, Stories and Lessons from America's Unsung Environmental Movement, edited by the journalist Audrey Lim. This book, it's a very special project. We worked on it for many years. It provides what we think is the first kind of wholesale, vivid introduction to America's largely unsung grassroots environmental groups. Those groups that are often led by activists and by people of color and the poor. Through different formats, original reporting, personal profiles, oral history interviews, artwork. We learn how these activist groups are devising creative new tactics, building sustainable projects to transform local economies, and organizing people long overlooked by the environmental movement, often on a shoestring budget. It's a very, very inspiring story. It's meant to capture both stories, but also hard-won strategies from this cross-section of pivotal environmental actions you may have heard about in the news, everything from Standing Rock to Puerto Rico. And it's meant to offer a new model for the larger environmental movement and inspiration for concerned citizens everywhere. You see it in 2 dimensions on the screen. It's turned out to be a really lovely package. I worked on it very much with my own older sons in mind, high school and college. It has beautiful imagery, a lot of very incisive kind of first-person reporting. It's meant both as an introduction and a kind of call to action for this new generation of people young and old interested in environmental work. We couldn't be more happy to be launching the book in a very close partnership with the climate advocacy organization grist.org. Please check out theworldweneed.com to meet dozens of the frontline community members and organizations featured in the book, as well as a lineup of virtual launch discussions this spring and summer. In July, we are totally excited to publish what is really a part work of art, part climate emergency resource, the Atlas of Disappearing Places, Our Coasts and Oceans in the Climate Crisis. It's just a haunting and beautifully rendered look at the emerging crisis of sea level rise. It has charts and graphs and visually striking maps that use a really unique ink on dried seaweed technique. It's meant to depict cities, communities, and sacred places from Shanghai to Houston that are under existential threat from the global warming of the oceans. The book is from communications expert Saros and artist and researcher Christina Conklin, and it considers the serious consequences of oceanic change on human culture and looks at the effectiveness of current measures from government policies to grassroots activisms to mitigate the effects of climate change. The authors are just extraordinary people. They're brimming over with enthusiasm and excitement for this project. They see the book as kind of the crystallization of their life's work and the perfect vehicle for each of their respective talents. We think that as interest in the climate crisis has exploded over the last couple of years with people taking to the streets in protests, more coverage in major news outlets, this beautifully packaged book, which is modeled after the best-selling Atlas of Remote Islands, will be an indispensable resource for readers of all age groups to learn about the devastating consequences of our changing oceans, while offering positive stories of grassroots movements confronting the challenges ahead. We encourage you to check out our catalogs in Edelweiss, where you can download digital review copies of these and many more frontlist titles. Don't hesitate to reach out to us or to me directly if you're interested in physical review copies, because we're happy to provide them. And if you want to check out www.thenewpress.com, we've just now posted a list of a dozen New Press books around environmental justice issues. As I mentioned, this is an area we've been publishing on extensively, but it's also a real growth area for us today, and we're very excited to tell you more about it. Thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. That last one, that really as a picture can be pretty impactful and tell a strong story. That's really delivers on that. So, all right, we're approaching our last few titles, but they are no less important or intriguing. The next one's from Llewellyn, and we have the author, Jack Adam Weber, here to talk about his book.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Sarah and Edelweiss, for having me here and my publisher. It's really good to hear from the New Press and Mark. I really appreciate your work. I am a licensed acupuncturist, a Chinese medicine physician, and on the grounds in the streets activist. I founded the Extinction Rebellion arm of the global movement here in Ojai, California. And I really appreciate hearing all the works today and all the books and all the information. And what I've done in my book is a particularly unique and difficult angle to the climate crisis. And when I first became poignantly aware of how difficult and intense and urgent of a situation we're in, I stopped seeing as many human patients and sort of took on the earth as my VIP patient. And coming back to the message of this symposium, which is Our Actions, Our Earth, and Caring for the Earth, the introduction of my book is titled Caring Enough. And I open the chapter with a quote by a Nobel Prize winning psychologist, Daniel Kahneman. And the quote is, "To mobilize people, this has to become an emotional issue." So Climate Cure is about the internal dynamics of the climate crisis. It's about becoming the kind of person that will take advantage of and actually act on all the things that many of the presenters today have already demonstrated. So in the spirit of Chinese medicine with yin and yang, action is very important. But I wrote this book because years ago, I started to ask myself, why aren't we doing enough? Why aren't we doing enough? How can we nonchalantly and almost casually walk towards our own extinction and the annihilation of planet Earth? And that began a deep inquiry process for me into what is it inside us that allows this to happen. So one of the lines from the introduction of the book is that please consider that 75% of the battle to become climate aware and to take meaningful action in the world occurs between our deep hearts and our first steps in the world. In other words, it's an inner job. So this is a book about resiliency. It's about how to become that kind of person that can care enough. So caring enough is not an easy subject. So I weave a lot of different disciplines, things which I've researched, things from my clinical practice, my work with patients, my experience in activism. And at bottom, it's an emotional support guide. And it's a guide for how to work through the things that block us from caring, from loving, from becoming the people that I think we all sense in ourselves that we can be and that we want to be. So there are lots of books about what to do outwardly, and these are very important. This is a book mostly about what to do inwardly, and it's about healing. So I reframe the climate crisis as a healing relationship, not a fight, right? If we're fighting, when we fight the climate crisis, that creates this polarity that we're separate from the natural world, and we have to sort of battle against nature. And what I try to reveal is that the climate crisis is our own doing. It's our own shadow coming back upon us. So to truly heal the climate crisis, I have a whole chapter, an in-depth chapter on shadow work. I have an in-depth chapter on eco-anxiety and how to deal with anxiety, which is a major problem, especially for a lot of the children today. And this is mostly a book for adults, but I think, late-term teens as well. And especially for parents, resiliency is very important. Learning how to manage our emotions, learning how to critically think, learning about the science, so that we can be exemplars and we can hold that container for our youth, to which we're, bequeathing the planet. So the emotional work that I present in the book is not only how to cope with anxiety, but also how to cope with fear. And that's different than anxiety. So having emotional intelligence around fear, around anxiety, around grief and grief work, and what grief work means and why that's so important, as well as managing anger. And not only managing these emotions, but leveraging them. So difficulty and fear often cause us to shrink away. So we shrink away from ourselves and we shrink away from the issues in the world that really matter. And that creates an ongoing disaster. So this is a book about how to become more inwardly and resilient in our communities and with other people, so that instead of what is ostensibly a lose-lose situation of shrinking away from ourselves and from the world, it becomes a win-win in the sense that we get to heal our own lives and we get to interface and feel a sense of meaning and purpose and passion with healing the most important issue that faces humanity right now, which is the climate crisis. So I also take the angle that as we become more emotionally resilient and we learn how to sort of survive on less, and I think a great theme for Earth Day and for the climate crisis is that less is more. And so the book is really about building what I call inner richness, right? Creating a rich inner life, a passionate, a creative inner life. And I go through the steps in the book. There are many exercises in the book to make the material very personal for each reader, so that readers can work through their own blocks and move into a sense of greater wholeness and sense of fulfillment. And the message is that when we create a sort of rich inner life, as well as a rich and an equitable outer life, we don't need to be on the American hamster wheel of collecting and buying and consuming, right? So by creating this dynamic, we're allowed to live simpler lives and create and dedicate more of our time and energy to activism, taking care of the planet, and doing things that truly matter.
Thank you, Jack. I think you may have written that book for me. It seems like a good complement to all of the books today for people who care passionately about this topic, and feel the anxiety and the heartache while at the same time wanting to take action. So thanks for sharing with us. I want to move to the next title today. Comes from Girl Friday Books, and we have both Ingrid Emmerich from Girl Friday Books and Rick Quinn, the author, here to share this one with us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Happy Earth Day. I'm Ingrid Emmerich. I'm the publisher of Girl Friday Books, a newly launched publishing arm of Girl Friday Productions, which is the book development company that I started in 2006. We are based in Seattle, Washington, and I really couldn't be more pleased or more proud to launch this endeavor with this book. It is a story that captivated me from the very beginning. It's a cause that I'm passionate about, and I couldn't have asked for a nicer, better, more amazing author to be our inaugural title here. So I'm really pleased to have Rick join us today. I'm going to just give you a little bit about the book and then have him sort of tell you a little bit about the inspiration for the story and a bit about putting together Just Like Us. So this is just a visually stunning book that looks at the great apes in Africa and Asia. It is Rick's story of going to these places, working with some amazing organizations, training veterinarians in those regions to help the apes and the conservation efforts there. Rick works with the Jane Goodall Institute. Dr. Goodall kindly provided a wonderful foreword for this book and has been terrific about promoting it along the way. The pictures inside are just incredible. Rick is a veterinarian ophthalmologist, but also happens to be an incredible wildlife photographer as well. So, you know, every page, just gorgeous photographs and really just brings to life the crisis of the apes, and many of them being many of them with populations in rapid decline, but also the beauty and just the incredible connection that we as humans should have to our not so distant relatives. So I feel like, you know, whatever we can do to work to save them and their habitat is just a very, very important environmental and issue, as well as really a moral one on a lot of levels. So this book is kind of a combination of things. Not only is it to raise awareness, but also it is a story that I think inspires hope, because we can save these beautiful animals, and we can do all kinds of things, as Rick has, to just rise to the occasion, to actually go out and make action from our beliefs. Rick writes in his prologue, sorry, a hopeless romantic, I'm forever drawn to stories whose main characters, against all odds and a great personal risk, use their skills, passion, and limited resources to right the wrongs of social injustice, wrongful conviction, or some environmental disaster. People stirred to move off the sidelines, to become involved, build awareness, influence government policymakers, and do good. So I guess, like Rick, I am a hopeless romantic, which is why this book and Rick's story is what is so important and so inspiring. And I'm so pleased to have it be the very first book in our new publishing endeavor. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn over Rick to talk a little bit about the story.
Well, thanks, Ingrid. That's a tough act to follow. This all began when I came across 2 magazine clippings about Africa, gorillas, and veterinarians. And as a veterinarian, it all looked pretty intriguing. And before long, I found myself on my way to East Africa, basically, and admittedly on a whim, to photograph a few gorillas and maybe do a little teaching for the veterinarians and the veterinary students in the region. When I was there, I was incredibly impressed with just how much they did with so little, how dedicated they were, what an important job they had looking after these endangered populations of mountain gorillas in that case. The next part of the journey came with a lecture that I attended by Jane Goodall, didn't know her at that point. By the end of it, I realized I was in serious trouble. It might finally be time to listen to my inner voice and roll up my sleeves and actually get working on a cause that resonated with me. And most importantly, quit making excuses for why now isn't the ideal time. And that really was the birth of our charity, our wildlife charity, Docs for Great Apes. So one country after another, one species of great apes after another, over 7 years on 2 continents, I photographed great apes in their natural environment. And just as importantly, listen to the stories of the people like the trackers and guides and researchers and veterinarians on the front line, always working in pretty tough conditions, spending long times away from their families, separate from those that they love. Before too long, I actually recognized that theirs was a story that needed to be told. And I have never written anything other than a scientific article, but thought, I might just be able to become the voice that for those that deserve to be heard, but just can't get their story across. And that voice became Just Like Us. It's a book about stepping up to the plate, as Ingrid said, moving off the sidelines, which is what I had to do. It's about understanding our closest relatives, the predicament that they're in, mostly because of our actions. It's also about the brave people, as they say, that risk their lives and are still very proud to be protecting these great apes. And I do hope it raises awareness and some funds. 100% of the proceeds from this book will go to the Docs for Great Apes project, where we sponsor, we create scholarships for African veterinarians to learn wildlife medicine so they can work in Africa's national parks and sanctuaries. So thank you, Sarah and Edelweiss, for the opportunity, and for Ingrid as being the leader of an awesome team. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the pictures in that book. It just seems heartwarming and inspiring, and thanks for sharing your important work with us. Our last title this afternoon comes to us from Green Tree, which you can find under Macmillan and Edelweiss. And I feel like here's a book again that was written for me personally. I love how we can find ourselves in books like that. And we have the author Jen Gale here who's going to talk to us about it.
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you. I always feel frightfully British after when I was speaking after after everybody with American accents. I'm in the UK. I'm in the southwest of England, yeah, thank you for having me. I always describe myself as an ordinary knackered mum of two. So if there is any background noise, that's my two boys marauding around in the background. They are 12 and 10. It's tea time over here, so hopefully they will be quiet whilst they're eating. This is my second book. My first book was published with Green Tree in January of last year and is the Sustainable-ish Living Guide. And the reason I think I wanted to write both the books, and the reason I talk about this idea of sustainable-ish, is because I think a lot of the time sustainable living and eco and green stuff can feel very overwhelming, can feel like if we're not all in and we're not doing everything, then it's kind of not worth doing it at all. Whereas the important thing, and I think Jack was saying that I was really fascinated by that sort of 75% statistic, that it's that inner work. The important thing is making that first step. You know, once we've made that first step, then we make the next change and the next change. So if I can help in some way to make that first step as accessible and as easy and as sort of a lower hurdle as possible, then the whole idea that it will help sort of get more people on board. So my own journey into sort of sustainability started 2012-13 when I decided quite randomly that I was going to drag the rest of the family along in a year buying nothing new. And I hadn't really joined the dots. I just hadn't thought about this idea that what I was buying was having an impact on the planet. And I think I was probably then in the same situation that a lot of people are in now, in that I was kind of unconsciously looking away. You know, I was kind of like, if it can't be that bad, and if it was that bad, then the government would be responding in the same way that they've responded to the pandemic over here, or that, you know, that it, you know, it can't be that bad. Otherwise, these businesses wouldn't be allowed to still do these things. They'd be putting in all this sort of legislation, and then kind of going along and doing this year and being forced to slow down my consumption and being forced to think about what I was buying and where I was going to get it from and who might have made it. And it was the same year as the Rana Plaza factory collapse, which was the 24th of April, so just coming up, Fashion Revolution Day just coming up. And, you know, all these things that I had just sort of thought, oh, well, you know, yes, it sounds really cheap to get 3 t-shirts for £5 or $5, but it must be okay because they're allowed to do it. And then suddenly realizing it's absolutely not okay. And all these things are happening and having a huge impact. But at the same time, feeling really overwhelmed, feeling, you know, a busy parent. I've got a to-do list as long as my, you know, as long as my arm. I'm spinning all these plates, and you're handing me another plate and telling me that I've got to, you know, with Save the Planet written on, and I've got to somehow juggle all these plates and not have them all come crashing down to the ground. So that's the kind of reason behind writing the books. And then this idea of doing a sort of parenting specific one, because I feel like when you become a parent, it's that sort of double-edged sword. You're suddenly far more aware of the future that this precious new little bundle is going to be facing, at the same time as you have no time, no headspace, no sleep, no energy, and a whole influx of stuff coming into your house that you're being told by retailers and manufacturers that you need. And it's really hard, you know, the kind of rabbit caught in the headlights thing. So the book is split right from sort of pre-baby all the way up to teenagers. So there's a chapter on each kind of section, and obviously there's lots of overlap in between, but looking at all the ways that we can almost sort of tweak the things that we're doing so that we're lowering the impact that they're having. And also I talk a lot in there about, you know, how you can bring the rest of the family along with you, because I always say, like, if it was just me, I would probably be pretty much nailing this. You know, like I'd probably be well, I like to think I'd be cycling everywhere. I'd be eating a lot more plant-based. But the fact that you've got to drag, you know, 2 kids and a partner along with you does make it much more difficult. And that's before you even think about in-laws and grandparents and family and school and all those sorts of things. So there's lots of tips and tricks in there about how you might be able to have those conversations as well. And the whole idea of both the books is that they're very action focused. So they're very, you know, I'm sure we're all guilty of reading a book and having the very best intentions and then nothing really happens. So at the end of every chapter, there's some sort of bullet point suggestions for things you could literally go and do straight away. And then a little bit for you to literally pick up a pen and pencil and kind of write in there your own rough plan of some actions that you want to take, with the idea that you kind of read and do, because nothing changes if nothing changes.
I love that. It's so true. But I love how it just encourages you to take that first step of finding something that works for you and for your family, and just starting there and making that approachable and not so intimidating. So thank you for sharing your work with us. That's a great one.
No problem.
All right. I don't know about y'all, but I leave today feeling, I think, more hopeful, definitely more inspired by all of these books. I can't wait to read them myself, or to my children, or give them to people in my life. I think that will appreciate them. If you are a professional book buyer, definitely check out the additional title data for all of these in Edelweiss to inform your buying. Don't forget, many of these have review copies available to download in Edelweiss and leave a review. Thanks so much for your time today. I hope you also feel inspired to restore and repair our earth through our actions that we take each and every day.